Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, I make content relating to my active fentanyl addiction and also relating to my experience with prison. I worked in a high security men's prison for a period of time. I was also previously in a relationship with somebody who was incarcerated as well, so I've got two different perspectives on that. So if those things are of interest to you, then please do subscribe. This video is going to be more linked to the addiction side of things, but a little bit different from kind of my previous videos. So this is going to be a video talking about how genetics have played a part in my own addiction and how I feel that may have impacted on myself. In my family, I only really have my mum's side of family. My dad isn't in my life and hasn't been since I was very, very little. There's no one that I'm aware of that struggles with any form of drug addiction, whether that be medicated or illicit drugs. There isn't anyone that I'm aware of that struggles with drug addiction the way that I do. However, there were things that happened when I was younger that I believed were normal, and come to find out now that they really weren't with regards to my parents. And having done some research, genetics do play a part. It's likely that if your parents are addicts, that is going to impact you and could possibly lead to you having an addiction. It's kind of that nature versus nurture debate, and it seems to be about kind of 50-50. Obviously, that's not to say everybody whose parents are addicts are going to end up being addicts, but like I say, it's about 50-50. So it's about 50% nature, 50% nurture. There's not to say there's a particular addict gene, but there's something in you which very well might mean you follow down a similar path. Mental health is genetic, and if people have mental health issues and they have children, there is a likelihood that that is going to be passed along. A dual diagnosis is having a mental health issue as well as a drug addiction. If somebody's parents have mental health issues, or people close to them in their family, in their immediate family, have mental health issues, there's a high likelihood that they are also going to have mental health issues, and therefore that could also then lead on to a dual diagnosis with the drug addiction. So there's that side of things as well. Similarly, if your parents are using drugs and they use drugs around you and that's seen as being normal to you, there's also going to be an emphasis more on the nurture side of things, that being around drugs and seeing that as being normalized may very well mean you follow down the same path because of that. My partner, for example, he witnessed both his parents, who are drug addicts. He witnessed them constantly using every type of drug, injecting in front of him from being a very little child. He never went down that same path, but his brother did. He's never touched a drug in his life, my partner, but his brother very much followed down a very, very similar path. That's kind of a good example of the kind of nature versus nurture. Both grew up in exactly the same way, same household, same parents. One followed down the same path, the other a completely different path. So that's kind of an example to show you. With myself, as I said, no one that I know of is addicted to drugs, but I have witnessed addiction very, very prominently. As I said, my dad isn't in my life and hasn't been since I was little, so this is only going to be from what my mum's told me and what I remember witnessing. He left when I was about 6, so it's only what I remember up until that stage. I do remember my mum used to work at the weekend, so when we weren't at school, my dad would have us, and we didn't realise he was telling our mum that he was taking us to the park or taking us to the zoo or spending the day with us and doing something really nice. Actually, what he was doing was going to the corner shop, buying us a magazine, £1 magazine, putting us in his car, parking outside the bookies, the betting shop, and leaving us for up to 3 hours on our own. We were 4 and 2 at that time. This went on for a number of years, but when it started we were probably about 4 and 2. He didn't come out to check on us at any point. He would just leave us no drinks, no food, just leave us. And that was normal to us. We just thought that was absolutely normal. When you grow up with something, you don't realise until you get older that actually this isn't normal. So yeah, he would go in and he would bet, and he earned a lot of money. My dad was in a very, very good job. We lived in a lovely house at that time. We had really nice things. We had nice holidays. And he was very controlling, so my mum didn't really realise they had separate bank accounts. My mum couldn't see his bank account, and so she never realised quite how much money he was betting. And she obviously didn't realise that actually, instead of looking after us, he was just leaving us in his car and betting away a load of money. It was usually the horse racing that was his big thing, but also football, he would bet on that as well, but it was mostly horse racing. When I think back to that now, it was probably only about 5 years ago I thought about it, and I thought, that wasn't right. Like that really wasn't okay. And I told my mum, and she was like, I can't believe that he kept that he told me that he was taking you to all these nice places, and actually all he was doing was keeping you in his car whilst he went and spent a load of money. And I can never remember him winning anything, because that is the thing with betting. The same with all addiction. You think you're going to get to some great, end result, and you never do. You just get further and further into addiction. From that point, obviously, as I said, my parents split up, and my dad has never really made that much of an effort with me and my sister. He left, like I say, when I was about 6, maybe 7. It was somewhere around there. He had an affair, and he left us in a very, very vulnerable position with next to nothing, and we were very, very close to being homeless, and he never really bothered with us. But when he did, we would see him, we were supposed to see him, the court ordered that we saw him every other weekend, but it was much, much less often. Maybe at the start it was like once a month, and then it became much, much, much less regular. And when we would go round, bearing in mind he'd pick us up in the evening on Saturday and drop us back Sunday evening, so we're there about 24 hours. We would get there. Anything that he'd missed in getting me and my sister would be on TV, so any football or any horse racing, and we had to sit in silence or go upstairs. And we're little kids, we're not going to sit in silence, so most of the time we were sent to the room to sit there. And we didn't really care that much, because we had a TV, we had a computer, we had like our little, Game Boys at the time, so we were quite happy. But you don't realise until now that, well, why didn't he want to spend any time with us? Because his addiction was ruling. In my opinion, how I see it now is his addiction was ruling everything, and he was like, no, I want to I need to know what's going on, have I won any money? And he would almost get us involved as well. From when we were very little, it was like, okay, so pick a horse that you think might win, and what name do you like, or what, jockey colours do you like, and things like that. And now I think back, like, that's almost a bit bizarre to get your children involved, but he didn't realise it was an addiction, I doubt. It wasn't anything that was spoken about, it's back in the 90s, it wasn't really spoken about, especially gambling addiction wasn't spoken about really then. So that was kind of my dad. We rarely saw him, and then I haven't seen him for about 10 years now, probably longer actually, in about 15 years I've not seen him. As far as I'm aware, like from when I last saw him, he was exactly the same. Like, priorities were just the horse racing and football and gambling, and he always had, it open on the computer. He'd always be going to the betting shops. He always had the newspapers open on that page and circling each one he'd made a bet on, and it was a very prominent thing in his life that he did all the time. And that's one thing I'll always remember about him, is he was just focused on that, and you couldn't talk to him when he was doing it, because that was his priority and that's what he was doing, and no one was going to stop him. So moving on to my mum. Now, when my mum and dad were together, it was a very volatile, very horrible relationship. He was very violent. My mum had to defend herself and could also be violent back. They argued all the time. See, my dad had an affair, my mum found out about it. My mum, when she was going through that, she used to drink. used to drink alcohol, which I just thought was normal. You know, parents drink alcohol, parents have a glass of wine with their dinner, parents have a drink at Christmas or what have you. And I just thought it was normal, because when you're brought up around it, like my partner with his parents, you do think it's normal. Until I would go to a friend's house and see, why is their mum not getting a drink as soon as she comes in from work? Why is she having like water with their dinner? That's weird. And to me it was just like, that's weird. I also thought it was weird that their parents seemed to like each other. I was always like, why do their parents not argue? Why do they act like they actually like each other when they can bear to be in the same room as each other? Because my parents would just try and kill each other every time they were in the same room together. But it was just bizarre to me. Every time I went to a friend's house, I was like, well, that's weird. Well, actually, no. My childhood was weird, but that's beside the point. Yeah, my mum would get very, very drunk, and it would be a case of literally, second she walked through the door, drink, argue with my dad, they'd get really drunk, they'd have a fight, they'd shout at each other, me and my sister would be crying, sitting on the bottom of the stairs crying and begging them to stop. They'd carry on fighting, and then we'd go to bed. And that was kind of pretty much every night. I can't think of a night or an evening or getting home from school where we all just sat down and had a nice night. Not one night springs to mind. I can remember a kind of okay Christmas, but again, my mum would drink too much. But that was just, to me, that was normal. And my mum would act like it was normal and say, it's Christmas, we have a drink at Christmas, or it's the weekend, I'm having a drink, or whatever it was. And to me, it was like, oh yeah, fine, it's what adults do. They drink alcohol. And there was kind of a running joke in my family, and there still is now, about how mum likes a drink. My aunties, my uncles, my cousins always say, oh, your mum likes a drink, and it's like a bit of a running joke. So obviously my parents split up, like I say, when I was about... Sorry, I'm really itchy. I changed my patch today, and I'm trying not to itch, but it's driving me mad. So yeah, my parents split up when I was young, and from that point my mum used to drink. Well, I heard her talking about she's stressed and it helps, and I thought, it's fine. It's what adults do. And when it's your mum saying it, you kind of think, well, yeah, she's got a point, if it helps her. And it was a horrible time, because we were left with nothing. And not long after that, her mum died, who she was very, very close to. We were next to homeless. We almost were homeless. We had nothing. We were very, very poor. And so I looking back now, it's like, it's not a healthy way of coping, but I get it. So following on from that, we then, got into a little bit of a better position. And as a teenager, I started to notice she won't even say hello to us before she's got through the door. She's poured herself a wine, she's had a bit, and then she'll come and say hello to us, or how's your day, or whatever. But it was very much like, come through your door, get a wine, then I can speak to people. And it was excuse, oh, I've had a stressful day, or so-and-so was being a dick at work, or whoever was annoying me, or she was being a bitch, or I'm having a drink. But it literally was the case of, and I used to joke about it and laugh about it with her, but it wasn't until I got to about, say, teenage years, where I started to think, like, that's not normal. Like, that's really not normal. And I looked at my friends' parents, and they're not like that. And at the time, like I say, when I was very young, I thought, well, that's weird, they don't do that. And I started thinking, no, actually, I think it's weird that my mum can't even say hello to us before she has a drink. Now, she went to the doctors at one point, and they said they wouldn't class her as an addict, but they would say she was dependent. And she took that as, oh, I'm fine because I'm not an addict. Well, she's functioning because she has a job. And that's the thing she used to say. If I was an addict, I'd have a drink first thing in the morning, or I wouldn't be able to go to work. There was times when I caught her finishing a glass of wine from the night before in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning when she's getting ready for work. And she would laugh about it and be like, well, it can't go to waste. And in her defence, she would say, the doctor says I'm not an addict. And yeah, she was classed as dependent, which is very, very similar. And alcohol is the thing for her, that no matter what happens in her life, if she's happy, if she's sad, if she's stressed, if she's grieving, no matter what is going on in her life, alcohol is the thing that she always turns to. And it's sad because, like I say, I just wanted her to come and say hello to me when she got in from work, or just have a conversation with me, but it was very much like, can't do that till I've got a drink. And she was always the one at parties that would drink too much. Every time she'd start drinking, even up until a couple of years ago, she'd be drinking on a weekend before it was even midday. And to her, that was just normal. That was just completely normal. And we all thought it was normal. And then we realised it wasn't normal at all. And I always just say to her, please don't drink as much. And she'd say, I'm not an addict. And she'd get quite angry about it. I'm not addicted. I'm fine. Leave me alone. This is the one thing that I do. I don't smoke. I don't take drugs. I'm not overweight. I'm healthy. I walk a lot at work. Just let me have this one thing. And she would get very protective over it, which again says to me, like many addicts are protective over, what they're addicted to. That when I started learning a bit more and I started looking into kind of psychology a little bit more, I thought to myself, actually no, I think this is a sign of an addict, of somebody who is protecting their addiction and not letting anyone in and being very secretive about it. Because that was something else she'd do. She would be very, very secretive about it and, not let on that she's had as much as she has. The good news, I suppose, from there is that she's now with somebody who doesn't drink as much, because in the past she would be with people and she would, even on dating sites, it was like a constant thing, like, do you drink? I can't be with someone who wouldn't have a drink. And she'd almost, like, because I don't really drink very much, not particularly because of the fentanyl, more so just because I just don't really drink. Like, I will now and again, I'll have the odd glass of wine. I had one glass of wine last night because it was my partner's birthday, and on my birthday I had a few, but I don't really drink that much. And she'd always say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you want to drink? Why don't you drink? Like I was the problem, because to her it was so normal to drink, and drink in excess, like not just have one or two. Like, I'm talking, she would have 2-3 bottles a night, and that was normal. And every night she would have at least one, often it was 2 or 3, every single night. If she went one day without a drink, she would be like, guess what everyone, I didn't have a drink last night, guess what? But you could see she was on edge, and she was like, I can't go another night without having a drink. And I genuinely saw her, and I never saw her go more than one day, and one day was rare. Never saw her go more than one day without a drink. But so yeah, she used to only date people who would drink, because there was something wrong with them if they didn't like a drink. Now she is with a guy who doesn't really drink very much. He likes to drink, and at Christmas he got a bit merry and had a few drinks, but he's not somebody who drinks to excess. I've never seen him drunk, and so gradually that's kind of helped my mum in realising that she doesn't need to drink all the time. Obviously they live together, and she has cut back a lot. There's still that kind of running joke of that she likes a drink, and everyone knows that she likes a drink, but I feel like it's a lot more under control, and that it's not her deciding that she needs to drink all the time. Yes, I went round the other day and it was midday and she was pouring herself a glass of red wine, but I know it's a lot more controlled now. It's not that she's doing that every single day, but there is always that kind of slippery slope that she could fall down again. Obviously I don't know about my dad. I have no idea. I wouldn't even know who he was if I saw him in the street, but showing the two of them and their battles with completely different kinds of addiction, I think that may be why I'm a little bit more vulnerable to it, and because those things were normalised to me when I was younger, maybe that meant that I kind of fell down that slope a little bit more easily. I find it really interesting though, as bizarre as that sounds, because I'm living it, it's not interesting, it's my life, but I do find it interesting the kind of links between genetics and how and how that can play a part, I believe that it has played a part in myself, which does worry me for my children. But I will always just be honest when I have kids and speak to them in age appropriate ways about addiction and not hide it from them like my parents did with me. They, brushed it into the carpet, it's fine, it's normal, it's just what parents do. No, talk about them and say, okay, this happened. Talk about my parents and how I grew up, and talk about me and the battles that I've had, and talk about my partner and the battles that he had with his parents as well, and his brother. I think it's really, really important to talk to children about that and let them know, because then it's not seen as such a hush hush thing that we don't talk about. And hopefully given them all the tools. And obviously mental health is a big one, because my mum especially has really suffered with her mental health as well, and obviously we know that is genetic. Looking after their mental health and prioritising that is going to be the main thing that I think will help them not fall down the same path that I did, because my partner is a great example. Although he hasn't suffered really with his mental health, he hasn't fallen down that path, so it is not a life sentence, it is not the be all and end all, just maybe more vulnerable to it, is what I found from having parents who have suffered addiction. I hope you found this video interesting. As I said before, please do subscribe if you like this kind of content, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thanks for watching, bye!